What's up, you bushy-tailed little unicorn? I have a really important video if you've ever struggled with fat loss, and specifically if you've ever been on point with your nutrition, you've been exercising, but your weight isn't going down the way you'd expect it to, or the way you think it should. A lot of times people are on point with their nutrition, they're hitting their exercise hard, but the weight, it's not just going down. A lot of times it'll fluctuate upward, it'll spike up, and it won't go down as quickly as you think it should, and I wanna tell you why. And I've spoken about this before. I've spoken about how just because your weight fluctuated upward or spiked upward doesn't mean you're gaining fat. But recently I've been posting a lot about my weight on Instagram. I've been in the middle of this 90-day challenge and people have seen my weight spiking up even though I've been losing fat. And they're like, well, how do you know you're losing fat? Well, how do you know that you're making progress if your weight isn't going down? What I spoke about was 3 really common patterns that I've found in people over the years in regard to weight loss spikes over time. And because the reality is when you're measuring progress day to day with the weight, your weight will go up and down. But if you look at it from the long-term perspective, you'll see that even though there's spikes along the way, the trend is downward, and that's really what's important to focus on. And I've found 3 really common weight loss trends in over thousands and thousands of people that are the most common ways and the most common patterns in which people spike. And so I've named them. We have Dumbledore's ladder, we've got Horace Slughorn's downfall, and the Muggle's beware. And these are all the 3 most common patterns that I've seen. I'm gonna break each one down specifically with you in this video so you can see which pattern you fall into. And when you're losing fat and you end up spiking up or your weight isn't going down, you can see like, oh, this is very similar to Dumbledore's ladder, or this is very similar to Muggle's beware. And that's the one that you fall into, so you don't lose motivation. So you don't get tricked into thinking you're not losing fat when you actually are, so you can stick with this for the long term and keep making progress. But really quick, I wanna congratulate Bryce and Gina. You guys are the 2 winners from the last video. You won a free Sciat Fitness t-shirt. I'm gonna ship them directly to your front door. And if you want me to do another giveaway for a t-shirt or for a free phone call or for something, a giveaway for something, make sure that you like this video, give it a thumbs up, because if this video gets 350 thumbs up, in the next video, I'm gonna do another giveaway. And if you wanna be entered into it, subscribe and hit the bell to get notified when that video comes out. All right, so now we're gonna dive into it, and I'm going to explain Dumbledore's ladder, Horace Slughorn's downfall, and Muggle's beware separately. Before we get into it though, I want to explain why your weight is spiking. Why does it fluctuate? Why does sometimes it spike up randomly? Why does it stay at the same weight for a while? Why isn't it just going down while you've been hitting your nutrition on point, while you've been exercising? Why isn't it going the way we'd expect it to go? There are many reasons why. Many, many, many reasons. I've outlined the 7 most common right here, starting with salt, sodium intake. And not just a lot of sodium intake, but an abnormally high amount for you. This is all relative to the individual. And what happens is if you eat more salt than you normally do in a given day, your body's gonna hold on to water. That's what happens. When you eat more salt than usual, your body's gonna hold on to water, so you'll weigh more on the scale. But because you weigh more, that doesn't necessarily mean you've gained fat. It just means you're weighing more. In the same way that if you just held a bottle of water in your hand and stepped on the scale, you would weigh more because you are holding on to more weight. On the other end of the spectrum, and this is really important, I haven't heard many people talk about this, if you eat less salt than normal on any given day, the next morning you might weigh in less because you aren't holding on to as much water as you normally do. In which case you have to be aware the weight fluctuation downwards isn't necessarily a true weight, in that the next day, if you have a normal amount of salt again, you'll go back up. And it's important to be aware these fluctuations up and down, it's not just fat. A lot of it's water, and it has to do with your sodium intake. So just be aware of that. Another one is carbs. Again, if you eat more carbs than you normally do in a day, your body will hold on to more water because the carbs sort of act like a sponge. So if you eat more carbs than normal, they're gonna soak them up. And if you eat less carbs than usual, you'll flush it out. You won't hold on to as much water. It's one of the reasons why when people start a diet like the ketogenic diet, they'll lose weight very, very rapidly because all of a sudden they remove carbs from their diet, or almost remove them. It's not necessarily 0 carbs, but usually 100 grams or less per day. And if you remove them or almost remove them, you're gonna weigh less and lose weight very rapidly. But what happens a lot in this specific diet, ketogenic diets, very low carb diets, is that very rapid weight loss comes to a halt because after a certain amount of time, you just can't keep losing water. A lot of times in those diets, people will lose 5, 10, 15, 20 pounds very quickly, stop, and like, why isn't it going fast anymore? It's because there's not any more water loss that's gonna happen. Now it's just gonna be fat loss, which will be much, much slower. Gotta be aware of that. If you eat late, if you eat much later than usual, not to say that eating late is bad, it's not to say that eating late makes you fat, it doesn't. Your energy intake, your total calorie intake is what dictates fat loss and fat gain. Let's say, for example, you usually stop eating around 8 p.m., but one night you eat at 10:30 p.m. and you weigh in at the same time the next morning. Because you ate later, you're gonna be more full, you'll have more in you, so you'll weigh more in the next morning. Similarly, if you weigh in earlier than usual, let's say you usually weigh in around 8 a.m. You have to get up early one day, you gotta get to work earlier, you got a trip you gotta go on, you wake up earlier. If you weigh in at 5:30 that morning, you'll have had less time to float that weight off. That's what a lot of weight controlled sports call it. So I grew up wrestling. From 8 years old all the way through high school, I wrestled. If you watch a lot of UFC fighters, a lot of weigh-ins, they'll talk about floating weight. The night before they weigh in, sometimes they'll go to bed about 1 pound to 2 pounds above where they need to weigh in at, because they know that their body's just gonna float that weight off overnight. And if you have less time to sleep, less time to float the weight off, then you'll end up weighing in heavier. Again, not because it's fat, just because you'll lose weight overnight, whether it's through water loss or whatever. There's a lot of different reasons, but weighing in earlier, you'll probably weigh in more, and eating later, you'll probably weigh in more. Again, not fat gain, just weight gain. This is not an ice cream cone. It's a drawing of poop. I did it myself. And all it means is sometimes if you weigh more than usual, you might have to drop a dookie, and that's okay, period. Really quick, we're going to bypass stress. I wanna talk about that more in depth and jump to this, which is a picture of a barbell. Drew it myself. Not the best artist, but when you lift weights, your body is breaking muscles down in a good way. Essentially, it's causing muscle damage, and when your muscles get damaged, a lot of times they'll uptake a lot of nutrients, uptake glycogen, uptake water, uptake nutrients, which so when you step on the scale, in the same way that a sponge will take on a lot of water, it's gonna take on water, glycogen, nutrients, you'll weigh more. That's why a lot of times, especially after a heavy leg day, these big, powerful muscles, they soak up a lot, you're gonna weigh more the next day. It's really important to keep that in mind. And then if you take a rest day where you don't lift weights, you'll end up peeing a lot and you'll weigh less the next day because you're not holding onto that water anymore. Now, stress, I really wanna hammer home on this one because it's a big one. And a lot of marketers really like to take advantage of people to try and manipulate you into buying their programs or believing in their methods by hammering home on stress. And they talk about how, well, if you're stressed out, then you're gonna be gaining fat, and that's why you need to do this specific diet because it eliminates stress. And first of all, stress isn't a bad thing. Stress is very normal. We all go through stress. A lot of people talk about how like cortisol is a stress hormone, and if cortisol is too high, you're gonna be gaining fat. That's not accurate. You don't gain fat from high cortisol. You gain fat from eating too many calories. If you are very stressed and your cortisol is very high and you do end up stress eating as a result of it, then yeah, you'll gain fat because you're eating too many calories. But it's not that stress is inherently bad for you. And it's not that cortisol is inherently bad for you. It's not. They're actually both very good for you, and we probably would die without it. But managing it and understanding it, that's really where the magic lies. So what happens with stress is when cortisol goes up, a lot of times your body will hold on to water. It's gonna hold on to it really tight. Doesn't wanna let it go. Sort of a defense mechanism. So you'll weigh more on the scale. And then a lot of times when you are less stressed, water lets go, you weigh less, and it looks like you lost fat. It's really just weight loss. In the same way that if you get really stressed, it looks like you gain fat, but you didn't. You're just holding on to water. A lot of people talk about something called reverse dieting, where they all of a sudden added calories back into their program and they lost weight. And they're like, well, how come when I added calories back, I lost weight, but when I was eating so few, I wasn't losing? It's because when you were eating so few calories, your body was a little bit stressed, didn't want to let go of the water. When you added some calories back, oftentimes carbs, it got less stressed, you peed out, and then you weighed less. But it's not because eating fewer calories was making you gain fat or gain weight. All it was simply doing was holding on to a little bit of water. If you stayed eating that same amount of calories, you would have eventually dropped the weight. Just might have taken a little bit longer. Not to say that you need to eat very few calories, but to say that stress does not make you gain fat. Sometimes if the scale fluctuates upwards, it's just a sign that you're stressed out. And the more you can calm down and relax, the sooner the weight's gonna come off. All right, so real quick, before we go to the next section, if your weight randomly spikes up one day or for a couple days, it doesn't mean it's fat gain. Really important to remember. A lot of times, I'd say probably 95% of the time, it's coming from one of these 7 things. Look at your salt intake, look at your carbs, look at the times that you're eating, the times that you're weighing in, examine your stress, think about the last time you pooped, think about your weight training schedule if you had a heavy leg day. Look at all this, examine it, collect the data. Don't just jump to an emotional conclusion. Look at everything that's going on and then examine the facts. Because a lot of times, if you're definitely in a calorie deficit, these are probably one of the reasons why your weight's fluctuating. Okay, so before we jump into Dumbledore's ladder, Horace Slughorn's downfall, and Muggles beware, I want to outline what most people want and also why most people end up failing. When most people start, that was harder to take off than I expected. When most people start trying to lose weight, get in a calorie deficit, they want their weight to do this every day. Whoop. Nice, clean, fat loss every day, down, 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 down. If you ask them, do they expect that to happen logically? I don't think a single person would say yes. I think every single person would say, well, no, of course my weight's not gonna go down every day. But then when it's practically happening each and every day, when they're on point with their nutrition, when they're on point with their exercise, when they're really all in it mentally, and they see that their weight isn't doing this, they flip a shit. They're like, well, what the f, why isn't it happening? If their friend said, hey, I'm trying to lose weight, but it's not going down every day, they'd logically be like, listen, it's okay, that's what happens. But when they're doing it themselves, they freak the fuck out. And it's important to be aware of this because you have to treat yourself like you treat a friend. You have to look at your weight in the same way that you would look at a friend's weight. Look at all of the data, look at all the progress. You gotta stop being an asshole to yourself, stop being judgmental, stop letting your emotions dictate your actions, and look at everything critically and analytically. And that's what we're gonna do with Dumbledore's ladder, Horace Slughorn's downfall, and Muggles beware. We're gonna examine the most common weight loss trends, so when it's happening to you, you can look at it and see what's actually happening and know that you're not gaining fat, you're just in the process. Okay, so I'm gonna reveal Dumbledore's ladder first. I wanna say it's not the most common. I would say each of these are the most common. There are other trends as well, but out of all of the different trends you could fall into, each of these are the three most common. Dumbledore's ladder being the first, this is how it looks. And basically I'll explain what happens. When someone enters a calorie deficit, when they first start, they'll see quick weight loss. This quick weight loss could be over the course of 3 days. It could be over the course of a week. It's gonna differ person to person, but they'll see quick weight loss followed by a stall. From that stall, they'll see an increase in weight. And a lot of times, this right here is where people give up. Let's say, for example, this is for the first week. They see weight loss for the first week. Maybe they lose 3 pounds the first day, 2 pounds the second day, 3 pounds the third day, a pound the fourth day, so on until a week, boom, stop. Then they gain 3 pounds. What the fuck? They freak out. Why is this happening? This increase in weight could happen over the course of 2, 3, 4 days. It doesn't necessarily mean it happens in one day. It could be this short line, could be 2, 3, 4, 5 days. And within that time frame, that's when they flip a shit. Like, this isn't working, and then they quit. The people who succeed continue in their calorie deficit. They don't let this prevent them from keep going. And then whether it's a day or 2 days or 3 days or a week or 2 weeks later, boom, they go down again until another halt and increase in weight. Again, that's where a lot of people quit. It's easy to keep going when you're losing weight. When you hit that halt and the slight increase, again, could be a day, 2 days, 3 days, 2 weeks, that's when it's hard to keep going because you're not getting that external feedback of progress. That's when you have to keep going, stay with it. Same thing, and these increases, that's when people give up. People rarely give up when the going is good, when they're getting that feedback. That's why you have to detach your emotions from the scale, not let this cause you to be super excited, and not let this cause you to get pissed off and say, F it, it's not working. It's just all part of the process. And this is a very common way, this is what I call Dumbledore's ladder, that people will lose weight, gain, lose weight, gain, lose weight, gain, all while being in a calorie deficit. It's just these 7 reasons often causing these slight increases over time. Now, Horace Slughorn's downfall. Another very common trend. What happens here is rather than starting off with a quick weight loss like in Dumbledore's ladder, here there's almost nothing. Almost nothing happens at all. It stays relatively similar. I should note, and it's important to be aware, just because on this graph that I expertly drew, it's a straight line, it doesn't mean that it's going to be an exact straight line. It might have a little bit up, a little bit down, a little bit up, a little bit down, but the general trend is straight across. And also it's the same here. Just because this is straight down doesn't mean there's not many spikes in the middle, but this is just the way that I'm trying to get it across. You have a generally straight line, boom, sharp drop. Generally a straight line, boom, sharp drop. And these spots right here are when people quit. These areas in which they think, well, I'm in a plateau. That's the word they love. I'm in a plateau. I'm plateaued. That's when they start like, what supplements do I take? Like, what exercise should I do to get out of this plateau? I'm plateaued. You don't add anything into it. You keep doing what the fuck you've been doing. Stay in a calorie deficit, strength train, keep doing it. Stay in it. Just because you hit this plateau doesn't mean you need to change anything. If anything, it means you shouldn't change anything. You should stay consistent. Because when you hit this plateau and you don't stay consistent and then you say fuck it and you start eating more and stop exercising and just change shit, that's when you stop making progress. These two, Dumbledore's ladder, Horace Slughorn's downfall, very, very common, and start tracking your own data so you can see if you fall into one of those. This is actually what I tend to fall into, and if you look at my data, you'll see it. Here, it's sort of a combo of the two. You'll see quick weight loss followed by a spike and then stagnation. Quick weight loss, spike, stagnation, or plateau. If you look at my weight loss trend over time, a lot of times what you'll see is we'll just take this first drop out. That's what mine looks like. So if you remove this first one, what mine looked like first was this. And then it dropped, and then it went up, and then it went across, and then it dropped. And this tends to be what I fall into. It's really important. I've seen a lot of clients, a lot of Inner Circle members have this exact same one. I've seen thousands of people over the course of my years as a coach. These are the three most common ones. And anytime there's a spike, or a stagnation, or a spike, or a stagnation, or a spike, or a stagnation, that's where people quit. That's where they say it's not working. And I always ask, how do you know it's not working? Well, I'm plateaued. For how long? When was the last time you lost weight? 2 days? 3 days? A week? 2 weeks? Cool. That's normal. You're not gonna lose weight every single day. You're not gonna lose weight every single week. If you lost a pound a week, every single week, that'd be 52 pounds at the end of the year. Not everybody has 52 pounds to lose. It's very easy to look at these Instagram transformations. Look, I lost 100 pounds in 3 months. It's like, that's phenomenal. For the people who did it, amazing. Congratulations. That's not the norm. That's not 99% of us. Not to mention, and this is equally if not more important, a lot of the people who lose that amount of weight that quickly, unfortunately, gain it back, and often more. One thing that's really important to me is not how quickly you can lose weight. It's about how much you can lose and keep off for the rest of your life. And unfortunately, it's very common for people to do the extreme methods, the very low calories, or the completely eliminate carbs, or the whatever it is, in order to lose weight as quickly as possible. It's not sustainable. It's not enjoyable. The whole point of me doing this 90-day fat loss challenge is to show you that it's possible while still enjoying life, while eating pasta, eating pizza, having the foods you enjoy while still losing fat, and showing you that the weight fluctuations upwards, they're a part of the process. It's not necessarily fat gain. It's not that you're not making progress. It's not that it's not working. It's that it's just what happens. And as long as you stay consistent and as long as you don't give up, you will succeed. It's inevitable. You just can't quit here, can't quit here, can't quit here. Stay consistent, because as long as you don't quit, you will win. I promise you that. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please subscribe. Make sure you hit the bell to get notified when the next video comes out. And again, if this video gets 350 likes, we're gonna do a giveaway in the next one. I love you. Thank you. Talk to you soon.